NRL Fantasy is back, and so is the Casual Athlete. I'm Longy, previous NRL Fantasy overall winner, and I am pleased to be joined here today by you, Biz, from New York. How you doing, mate?
Mate, it's been too long. I always get jittery leading into the season. It's Feb, a month to go. I'm thinking of going to Vegas for round one. It's as good as it gets. Let's get straight into the footy.
Mate, that is prime. That is prime. And look, first, we're talking today about hookers. So, part of a big series, we're going to go through position by position. We're going to look at the cash cows as well. The first one here is Harry Grant. And look, he's a guy, he's owned by 25% of camp fantasy coaches. He's that A1 hooker. A lot of questions around him. Is he value? Should we avoid him because he's probably not going to make that much cash? Or is he a guy where you can set and forget there? Personally, he's not in my side, but where are you leaning with this one?
Yeah, Longy, to be honest, I'm on the opposite camp. He's in my side. He was one of my first picks for the reasons you mentioned. He's the A1 gun. When I'm paying up for players at the start of the season, I want them to be right at the top or right at the bottom. So they're either a bottom price cash cow or a guy I can rely on every week. Harry Grant, reliable as they come, coming into the prime of his career, way less question marks than a lot of the other guys we're going to go through on this list. But like you said, is there value in his price? No, he's had a 57 average last year. Maybe he gets a 60, 61, 62, but he's definitely going to make you, he's not going to make you that much cash. But I'm starting with him just for the banked points.
Yeah, fair. I mean, if you're going to play him as well, you want to avoid the origin period. So rather than trading him in round 5 and trading him out round 12, you can save yourself a trade there and start with him. I don't mind that, but I'm going to skip past Cook here and go to the guy that I like in this top section, which is Reece Robson. There's a few reasons to like Reece Robson. Last year, his average dropped off by about 5 or so points, and he went from 7 tries 2 years ago to 2 tries last year. Now, looking at him, and I'm thinking, look, he's a guy on the rise. He's a guy pushing his way into the Blues team. He's a guy who sort of forgot that show and go last year because the Cowboys pack was so behind. I'm looking at him and I'm going, all right, maybe they have a few soft games early, and maybe, against the Dolphins, even round 1, he racks up a couple of tries, and everyone else is chasing their tails trying to get him in. So I'm pretty hot on Reece Robson. The other part of this is you're saving over 100K on him compared to Damien Cook and Harry Grant. So even if he does fall short a bit, that 48 average, I think he can beat that pretty comfortably.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you said. The only thing is, I really haven't been able to factor why he was so poor fantasy-wise last season. And, if you look back at Reece Robson's stats as an 80-minute hooker, when he was at the Dragons, when he was at the Cowboys, he usually gets close to that 60-point mark. So you say there's a bit of 5 points average improvement in him. He's, in my eyes, got 10 points of average improvement in him. It's just, I really haven't been able to pinpoint why he fell off the curve last year. And so I need to get a bit more sure about that before I'm willing to pay 660K for a hooker in my team, knowing that guys like Grant don't really have that obvious a drop-off, or they haven't shown that drop-off. But you're right. I think the Cowboys will be a lot better this year. And I think whereas with Damien Cook, who I started with last year, it's a name we kind of skipped over. It's kind of, Cookie, you're probably going to pay for what you get. Whereas Robson in the top 3 there, he's the value pick. Like you said, there is up to 10 points of value there. But he could very easily replace Harry Grant in my team. He's sitting outside it at the moment. But I like your arguments, Longy. I'm kind of leaning towards what you said.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm swapping between them as well. But Damien Cook's another one. He is very interesting. So he's a candidate for a bounce back if you believe in it. If you believe that South will go that way too, because he went from 66 to 56 last year. So does he bounce back that 10 points? Is it a case of South are playing a different way and he's sort of aging? I don't think he's going to bounce back. And I think 773K, it's too much to pay for a guy where you're not sure. But at the same time, they're not going to carry a bench hooker. So theoretically, he could be a value pick, right?
Yeah, I agree. And the other thing with Cookie, and the same reason I like Grant as well, is these are the types of guys, exactly like you said, they can have a big score. They can go 80, 90, 100, right? And people are just chasing you and they're ripping apart their teams to, get them in. Whereas some of these other guys might have a 60 average, but some, like, for example, if I think of a mid like Isaiah, his 60 average comes from 55 to 65. He's not freaking you out every week not owning him. But if Cookie comes out and he starts the season with 100, watch every single person try to get him in. And that's what I'm worried about. So, look, I've just said yes to Grant, Cook, and Robson. So I don't know. Maybe I'm going to have to run 3 hookers in my team. Who knows?
There's a few other guys on this list as well we want to talk about too. But look, Cook, 3% owned compared to Harry Grant, 25% owned. So the people are with us there and not really on him. If we go to the next guy here, Jeremy Marshall-King, for me, the story on this guy is that he was fantastic for the first half of last year, and so were the Dolphins. Injuries caught up to him and the Dolphins, and they sort of fell off a cliff. So the question to me is, do the Dolphins come back and do they play that respectable brand of footy where they're in that hunt for the 8, or are they going to slide off a bit? I look at their team and I think, look, 47.3 average for him. If he can keep up the form he was at, he could be that 55 average for the first half of the year. Can he maintain it for the whole year? Probably not. But do you need him to do that in round 1? Absolutely not. So if you back him and you back Dolphins, it's a good buy.
Yeah, I agree with everything. And I think Dolphins will improve a lot from last year. I think we'll see more of what they were delivering towards the first 10 rounds of last year, longer. I think last year was a lot of young players, a new club. I think this year there'll be, the tougher fortitude the year long. In terms of Jeremy Marshall-King, he's been around for a while now. I know that last year was his first kind of season as the locked-in starting hooker. Like, I know he had some starting season at the Bulldogs, but this is the one season where the coach and the GM has gone out and said, "You're our hooker, you're our guy," and he played excellently. I'm just not sure if there's another gear in him to be a fantasy gun. Like, as you said, he could get to the low 50s, but can he get into the high 50s? I just don't see it. Has he got the talent? Yes, but until he can demonstrate that, I'm not going to gamble with a 650K hooker. So he's a pass from me.
Yep, fair play. I'm also skipping off him. Another one, Coruscant. He's in heaps of teams too. I feel like I'm speaking first and you're agreeing, so I'm going to let you go first on Coruscant here. Are you excited about this pick at all?
No, I feel like we're going to have a similar view here. Maybe I'm speaking for you, but I think the problem with Coruscant is he just hasn't shown the ability at the Tigers to play 80 minutes consistently. And they've just got a couple of hookers who are coming through, Simkin, Talon De Silva, who they're pretty bullish on, right? And so even though those guys aren't playing big minutes, they're playing enough minutes to make Coruscant not hit the ceilings he was at the Panthers. Also, Tigers coming off a Panthers team, like Tigers were terrible last year. They were improving at the back end. Coruscant was looking a lot better. But I'm still not expecting him to come out and play 80 minutes week in, week out. Now, he could play 80 minutes week 1, might not play 80 minutes week 2, and you're just going to have a bit of a roller coaster. At 44 points, yeah, he can get you 10 points of value because we've seen it before that he has a big score in him. But my problem with Coruscant is he misses too many tackles. And I'm not saying he's a bad defender by any means. Like, sometimes you'll see, similar to what Reed Marnie used to do, come out of the line, put a shot on. Yes, it's a missed tackle, but someone else finishes the tackle. But, yeah, he's a skip from me.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Only thing I'll add is I think Talon De Silva is awesome. And I think their long-term plan is for him to take over more and more minutes there. So if they gave him 20, 30 minutes a game, especially through the mid part of the year, I wouldn't be shocked at all. And I think Coruscant suffers. So, yeah, we're on the same page there. Jaden Brayley. Now, Jaden Brayley at 575K, I reckon I've said he's a buy like once a year at about this price.
He's been about this price every year. Yeah.
He does. And it's for the same reason because he's freakishly talented, but he just gets hurt in unlucky ways. My concern here is that Phoenix Crossland did enough last year to earn himself that bench spot. And they got rid of a few of the guys like, Connor Watson in previous years, Kurt Mann, a few of those guys that were hogging that utility spot without adding much value as hookers. They're gone. So Phoenix just slides right into that. But at 575K, it's not the value it looks like to me. I mean, are you considering Jaden Brayley at all at that price or not really?
No, I agree with everything you said. I think the only flip side is Kurt Mann's now left the Knights. So there's that additional kind of weird utility kind of jack of all trades role, which Crossland might take, and Jaden Brayley still plays 80 minutes. Because you're right, he's extremely talented. He's not a bad hooker by any means. The thing is, injury history, he hasn't really got a long established track record of 50-plus scores. I know he had that one season where he became the starter and he was brilliant, but he kind of fell off at the back end of the year. And every other year, he's kind of more of a mid-40s guy. So coming off a bad injury, with other options at the hooker mark, I'm not really considering Jaden Brayley unless he comes out in preseason, he guns it, he's tackling everything, he's running the ball past me.
Yeah, you're right. If he got 80 minutes in one of those preseason games or something like that, then we might consider it. Brandon Smith is a guy that's getting thrown into a lot of teams. 17% owned there. You're sitting on a 39 average from last year, right? So you've got that hooker and middle duality as well there. I look at him and I sort of remember every failure I had last year. So I'd like us to move quickly through this one. For me, on paper, it's a great buy, right? But in my heart, especially heading up to Valentine's Day as well, I'm in that emotional mood, and I don't know if I can let him back in.
No, I mean, look, to be honest, he's just pretty much the same price as last year, the same exact thesis. I passed on him last year. I was one of the very few coaches who was not interested in Brandon Smith last year. And the reason being is I just looked at his stats at hooker. I just saw a lot of lumpiness, and I just didn't think, even if he had a good season, he was, priced at 40. I thought maybe he'll get to a 45 average, but for a mid-ranger, like 5 points of value isn't enough for me. Usually my benchmark for value is 10 points of value. So do I think he's going to be a 50-point hooker? No, because I think his twin Sandon Smith, he showed some elements last year. I know he played in the halves, he played a bit of hooker, and I don't think they need Brandon Smith to be an 80-minute hooker. Okay, they just need a high-energy game, and if he's playing 60 to 70 minutes, I'm just not seeing it. I can definitely see a world where he's comes out of the blocks, but I'm not going to deal with that headache. Like I said, I'm going at the top or for some real proven value, like some of the guys we're about to talk.
Well, let's jump to them, man, because I think we're the same on Brandon Smith. There's going to be weeks where we look silly, but overall, I'm not feeling too bad about listing him. Now, Parramatta hookers. Let's go to Lussick first here. And look, I know you've done a bit of digging on these guys, so I'll let you lead in with this, but which guy would you prefer in terms of? I want you to answer this both ways. As a fantasy coach, who would you prefer to be the hooker? And then as a para fan, who would you prefer to be the hooker?
As a fantasy coach, I think that's a pretty easy one. I think Joey Lussick, even though he's a bit of a no-frills player on the field, on the pitch, he actually averages 50 plus when he's playing 80 minutes at hooker. He's got a strong work rate. I think he averages about 48 tackles a game when he's playing 80 minutes. He's not going to rack up crazy attacking stats like your Brandon Smith or your Harry Grants or Damien Cooks. But at 459K, if he's playing 80 minutes, he's definitely in my team as my second hooker, like guaranteed, lock it in. Brendan Hands, on the flip side, is, I guess, a more exciting player. He's been in Penrith's system. He had a great debut last year. He came out of the blocks pretty strong as a bench player. And then when Josh Hodgson went down, he had to increase his minutes significantly. And as a result, you kind of saw in real life and fantasy his output drop. Now, he started playing some 80-minute games towards the back end of last year, and it wasn't that inspiring for fantasy coaches. He seemed like a 35 to 40-point guy. But, Longy, I've heard you speak about this with on NRL.com, the official fantasy site. I agree with you in your thesis when you say that last year it was Hodgson's role. So the whole preseason would have been focused on Hodgson at the hooker position. Whereas Brandon Hands now and Joey Lussick, I've been watching some of the footage from the Eels preseason and training. They're both kind of sharing roles as the first team hooker. So they've built a scheme around these guys. So I think whoever plays there, including Hands, I'm expecting a lot of improvement. Plus Hands, you've got that dual position half in him as well. Now, I doubt he'll play in a single game in the halves unless there's significant injuries, but it's good to have in fantasy. But that I said all that, and it just means that, look, fantasy-wise, I'd prefer Lussick, but football-wise, as an Eels fan-wise, I'd like to see what Brandon Hands can do. But right now, as it stands, I don't think there's much of a skill gap between them. But Hands is just more of an unknown to me, so I want to watch him play.
Yeah, look, as an ex-half as well, he comes in, he's younger, he's more of an unknown. He gets that preseason, like you mentioned there. He could have upside, whereas Lussick, you know what Lussick is, right? He's played for a long time. He's a solid player. He's a good player, but Hands offers that upside there. Not much difference in price as well. I'm sitting Hands in my side right now because I like using the extra 30K. But if it is Lussick, it's going to be one of them for 80 minutes. That's the other thing too. So Brad Arthur did confirm that. whether it's hands or last six, you got to start with whoever it is, basically from round one. And if they get dropped or hurt or whatever it is, that's just bad luck.
Longy, just before we go on to the next game, I'm going to say I can 100% see this being a seesaw between Hand and Lussick all season, and fantasy coaches chasing which one is starting, swapping between them, since, like you said, they're at the same price. So, disclaimer, I can see that happening, and I'm calling it now.
Do we start with both?
No, don't do it. That was a joke.
Are you sure? We go one hooker, one half?
No, if they're... Next.
Look, that concludes hookers, actually, because Danny Levi, he's going to be in our Cash Cows video that we'll have coming up soon as well. So let us know in the comments which hooker you're starting with, and let us know if you want us to talk about anything else in the preseason. Otherwise, good to have us back, and welcome back, Biz.
Yeah, so good to be here. I don't know what to do with the hookers anymore. We've talked me into 2 potential guys. Time to remake my team from scratch.
We're picking 5 of them. See you on the next one.